Hello, YouTube. Today we're going to talk about shooting positions, specifically unsupported shooting positions. All right, so we're going to be covering the prone, the sitting, the kneeling, and the standing. We're going to be talking about traditional unsupported positions. We're going to be talking about how you would incorporate those positions as your basic rifleman. And then we're going to talk about how you can cheat a little bit if you are that DMR or Minuteman, Marksman, whatever you want to call it, right? So before we actually start getting into some shooting positions, some fundamentals that always apply. The lower we can get to the ground, the better, right? The prone is better than the sitting is better than the kneeling is better than the standing. Obviously, the more points of contact we can have, the better. The more points of contact we can have with the ground, the more points of contact we can have with the rifle, and the better of a position we can build with the more points of contact between those things, right? There's more structural points we can have connecting from the ground to the rifle, the more accurate our position will be, the more stable our position will be, which will lead to accuracy. We do not want to do bone-on-bone contact when we're in different shooting positions. We want to do bone-on-muscle. Typically, when we're talking about that, that's going to be knee on elbow, right? So our knee is a very hard, round, bony object, and our elbow is a very hard, pointed object. If you put those two right on top of each other, they have all this wiggle. There's not really any spot that it rests comfortably, right? So we actually want to do knee on tricep or elbow on thigh, or in the sitting, elbow on the inner knee, right? This is a lot more stable than this. This is a lot more stable as well. Hope that makes sense, boys. All right. While we're building our position and getting our natural point of aim, we want to make sure that we are adjusting our shooting position, not muscling the gun onto target. We generally want to have a 45-degree angle tilt with our hips towards the strong side, right? Another way to think about that is if we were standing straight on the target, we'd want to take 1/2 step back with our dominant foot. That just puts your shoulders in the proper alignment, right? If I'm like this, I'm reaching over with my weak hand, and that's causing a lot of reach and muscling. But if I just shift my shoulders and my hips a little bit, about 45 degrees, right? Then I can hold that rifle much easier without having to reach around up front. Reach around. Lastly, we'll kind of talk about this when we do the rifleman roll, but there's a accuracy versus speed give and take, right? Depending on your situation, your role, the target, etc., the distance between you and the target. Right, so I'm going to talk about how to do stuff super accurately, which is going to take a long time. I'm going to talk about as a rifleman how to do things a little bit quicker, will be a little bit less accurate. Obviously, you can flex in reality using your human brain with intelligence what you should do, right? If you're trying to shoot something 800 yards away, if you're trying to shoot a target 800 yards away, probably going to need a lot of accuracy. If you are trying to shoot a target 3 feet away, probably need a lot of speed, not so much accuracy, right? Hey, makes sense, doesn't it? All right, kids. Prone position, traditional unsupported. All right, first we're going to talk about making a loop sling out of your standard 2-point sling with an adjustment. Okay, so this is just a standard 2-point sling, and it has this adjustment section here with that tab that allows you to adjust. Reference my sling video, but if you have a front adjustment, you can take your front attachment point of your sling, connect that as far forward on your rifle as you can. Just unattach this back portion. Your sling is going to dangle. Gets it out of the way. You're then going to want to take and shorten up this front portion a little bit. Fish your arm through. Wrap it up so it's behind your tricep, between your tricep and your shoulder muscles. Tighten that down, right? So now I have an attachment around my arm to the front of the rifle. I can then take and weave my hand, right? Take it, come in like that, underneath the rifle, and grab it. And now when I go to pull forward, I can build a bunch of tension. And that'll help me lock in. And we're gonna use this for basically all of our positions in the traditional unsupported positions, except for the standing. We wanna have our hips and our body aligned behind the rifle, right? So the rifle's a straight line, and then going down across our shoulder to our hips and out our feet, a straight line, right? So that's gonna mitigate that recoil. I do not want to be off center like this, because now I have nothing mitigating this recoil. Where are we at? Also, our feet, we want them flat. This is gonna help us mitigate recoil by having as much contact as we can with the ground. It also keeps our feet low, right? We don't wanna get our heels shot off. We don't wanna get our feet shot off, having a fun day in the daisies, taking nice photos, right? Keep your feet down. All right, so we're in the prone. We have our loop sling attached. It's pretty tight. We're gonna jam our hand as far up there as we can. A lot of times you wanna wear a leather glove or something like that, or just be a man about it, you know, whatever. We're gonna wanna get our stock in our shoulder, right? And we don't want to, again, it's not bone on bone, it's bone on ground now, but it's the same concept. We don't wanna put our elbow, the actual point of our elbow down on the ground, because that's not very stable. So we're actually going to lean over a little bit, right? So I'm leaned over off the actual point of my elbow onto the side of my elbow, shift the gun, right? Sometimes this magazine will actually end up on the other side of your arm. Whatever the case is, this foregrip is getting a little bit in my way, but it's not too bad. So right here, I'm locked in, right? So I take a good prone position. The rifle's not going anywhere. I'm not using any muscular force to hold the rifle anywhere. The rifle's totally stable. Take it off safe, take my shot. I could adjust myself however I need to for my point of aim. Okay, so that's the traditional prone position. Wonderful. All right. Sitting, again, like I just did, you want to sit 45-degree angle, right? So if I'm trying to aim in down the direction of my phone, I'm going to sit at roughly a 45-degree angle of that. Loop sling still attached, same thing going on there. Rifle comes up, goes into my shoulders. Now I'm going to be putting my knees, my elbows around my knees, right? In the sitting, we can have both of our elbows can be supported. Okay, so you'll see how I have it set up here. My elbow on this one is it's on the inside of my knee, but it's pretty forward. And my elbow back here, it's hard to see, but it's pretty on the inside crook. But whatever you end up doing that's comfortable, and this can all change depending on target elevation or whatever, right? Whatever the case is. But it's important that you're not going bone on bone. So your elbow needs to be resting on some muscular or fatty pocket on your leg, or your knee needs to be resting on the tricep of your arm. Okay? Hope all that makes sense. Beautiful. Switching over to the kneeling. So you can leave your heel up and beyond your toe. But as I said, if you have the flexibility to do otherwise, it's better. Lower to the ground is always better. The more points of contact we can have the ground with, the better, right? So if I can drop this down and get another 6 inches lower to the ground, if I can get my whole foot laying on the ground as opposed to just my toes, that's more points of contact. Boom, locked in. So This is the kneeling, but it's almost like I'm in the sitting. Almost, right? Because I have my ass on my foot all the way on the ground. Okay? Now this, where you put your knee is going to depend on body type. If you have longer limbs and a shorter torso, like myself, you're going to want to put your elbow over your knee. If you have shorter limbs and a longer torso, you're going to want to put your elbow inside your knee. Right? Long torso people, long arm people. Okay, so that goes there. I've got the bone of my knee on the tricep of my arm. I've got my loop sling again, right? My ass is sitting all the way down, so my center of gravity is very low. I don't have any sway. There's a direct connection from the ground into my foot, up my leg, into my arm, connected to the loop sling into the gun. Again, with this loop sling and everything in there, this is pretty stable. This is pretty stable. You can shoot pretty accurately, pretty far like this. All right. Traditional standing unsupported is a truly unsupported stance. We're going to probably want to completely unsling our rifle. All the mojo of this is going to be how you funky hold this, right? So we're going to like reverse grip, sissy hip it, which will make sense in a second. Okay, so first of all, we're going to want to stand extremely bladed, right? So I'm not at a 45, I'm 100% bladed if I want to shoot this direction, right? So the rifle's going all the way across my body, right? This would be a 45, and this would be head on. 45, this is all the way bladed. This is how I want to shoot from the standing, right? We're going to want to take our hand and go under. So normally I hold the rifle like this. We're going to come off, reverse it like that, and hold underneath. And we actually want to put the weight of the rifle on the tension of our fingers. So I'm not using, and then we're going to pin our elbow as much as we can, and we're going to kind of sissy hip out like this. And we're going to try to use the tension of all the tendons in our body and how our joints work here to lock the rifle in. So I'm not using any muscles in my support arm here to hold it like this. I'm using all of my body, right? I'm sissy hipped, I'm pinning the elbow in all the way, and I've got my hand reversed, and then it's on the fingers, come around. Again, that magazine is gonna awkwardly be on the other side of the arm, okay? And I typically like to start high and then come down onto my target, right? So I'll come here, weapon off safe, take my breath out, find my target, take my shot. Hopefully all that makes sense. What up, YouTube? Hitting that Slav squat. We're going to talk about now from a rifleman's perspective, okay? So we're going to be maximizing speed, minimizing accuracy. We got some kit on, got a plate carrier with a bunch of mags, bump helmet. So we are a little restricted in what we can do with the rifle, okay? So we're going to talk about prone. Before we talk about the prone position, I want to spend a second talking about getting in and out of the prone position. So typically there's going to kind of be two scenarios you fall into. Either you've just received contact and you're dropping down to the prone immediately where you stand, or you're buddy rushing, you're taking some ground, and the position of cover you're going to take once you get to where you're going is going to be the prone, so you're running into a prone, right? So first of all, if we take contact, we're just chilling. We take contact, what we're going to want to do is immediately chicken wing the rifle, take our support hand, come down to the ground with it. At some point, probably before we even get to the ground, we're going to kick out with our legs. They're going to come back. We come down into the prone. Our rifle comes into our shoulder. We grab the rifle, ready to shoot. Got it? Wonderful, beautiful. How we get out of the prone position, either scenario is basically the same way, right? Rifle comes up, chicken winged. We plant one hand down on the ground hard. We posture up onto a knee or on both feet if we can. And from here, we power out into a run. If you're rushing or running into a prone, you're going to be rushing. And you're probably going to come down to a slide to your knees at first. And then from here on the knees, it's basically the same thing. We're gonna fall forward controlled. So the rifle comes into our shoulder, hand comes out in front of us, we fall forward. Beautiful. Now that we're down here on the floor, everybody, let's talk about the prone position. So I low crawl backwards. Tactical low crawl backwards. All right, so all this gear on is gonna make you kind of be a turtle. All right, if I try to do this right underneath me, I fucking turtle all super kind of awkward and hard. What I like to do is try and shift my gear forward and my body back, especially if I'm gonna be here for any length of time, right? Like I just had. So I just scooted back, my plate came up, I could hide my whole head behind my plate. Don't look at me, I'm a turtle. All right, but that allows my belly now to be touching the ground and me to be closer to an actual traditional prone position. All right, we're gonna put our magazine on the ground, if we can. The only reason we wouldn't be able to do this is if we needed to shoot at such an elevation that we had to get the mag up off the ground. But if we can get the magazine on the ground and we can engage, right, like this, we will. It's probably kind of hard for you guys to see, but my gear feels all kinds of fucky. When you're shooting in a combat scenario with a bunch of shit on, right, and I don't even have like a pack on and a belt on and all this other dumb shit, shit's gonna be mad fucked up. You're just gonna have to work through it and build the best position that you can. All right, if I can get this magazine on the ground and engage like that, I absolutely will. That's a lot of stability. If I can't get the magazine on the ground, then I'll be forced to pick it up. We are just resting our elbows on the ground, right? Both elbows are just resting on the ground. The gun is resting in our hands, and we are using muscular force in our forearms to hold the rifle up, okay? We're sacrificing a lot of accuracy to get increased speed in and out of position and increased speed of rounds on target once we're in position. The sitting is not applicable for riflemen because you need to be agile and ready to attack like a tiger at any moment. However, the kneeling is applicable, right? Typically we'll be shooting, press, 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 and we'll need to go into the kneeling for whatever reason. We will just immediately drop down into a knee, right? Our foot comes back and we drop down into a knee. We can do the hasty knee where we stand up and it's completely unsupported, or we can sit back to where I am now with my toes up, even though I would normally have the mobility to go all the way down. Typically, I'm not going to take the time to put myself in that immobile of a position as a rifleman, right? Met TC, be smart, you have a brain. So my toes up, my toes are on the ground, my heels up. I can rest my butt on my heel and then put my front elbow somewhere comfortable on my knee, right? Find that buttstock, which is difficult with a plate carrier on, get into target, and I can take shots. Now I have a lot of sway. There's definitely some sway here. This isn't a super stable, accurate position, but I have reduced my target, right? I am a smaller target for the enemy. I can hide behind cover, right? So if there's a little bit of cover behind me and I've reduced my target, now there's not much me left exposed, and I can get in and out of this position quick. And it does provide a little bit more stability than just straight up standing. All right, so a lot of the shoulder pocket that we would want to use, even on modern plate carriers, is taken up, right? And it can be hard to get unless you have a slimline stock, all the butt stock entirely in your shoulder pocket, which is why you've seen a lot of guys just run the teal hole, plus the Hydra heads up, CQB Navy SEAL Delta Team 6 assassin stuff, right? But I think, in my opinion, realistically, it's because of all this fucking gear. So rather than trying to get the whole thing wherever, you just get what you can get. And it is what it is. We're shooting 5.56. It doesn't have that much recoil. You can kind of just manhandle it if you need to. All right, so we want to stand at about 45-degree angle from the target. We want to have that general linebacker, tennis, athletic, I don't know what fucking basketball positions are. Stance, right? Slight bend in the knees, nothing too crazy. We're not like
Oh yeah, tactical.
I like that. Just a little bit in, so I can move, I can whatever. I've got a little agility to me. Grab as much of the buttstock as I can, wherever it's gonna be. We're in a bunch of gear, so it's gonna be fucked up. It is what it is. Pick that target up, engage, right? Hand placement. The more forward you are, the more physics, right? Science, physics, control you're gonna have over that muzzle. But also, there's a human factor of I'm not a robot and it's hard for me to reach my hand all the way out here and hold. I like to have a nice middle point. You will definitely see as time goes on, if you are Delta Navy SEAL 16 CQBing around all day, you'll find by the end of the day of CQBing, you've probably choked all the way up on the magazine well and you're resting your hand on a bunch of fucking gear because it's been exhausting holding your rifle up for 18 hours. Okay, is what it is. Human factor, don't be scared to be real. When I can, if I can, I like to have about midway up the rifle choke, I like to have a foregrip to give myself some reverse pullback and a reference point. It's not that big of a deal, you know, one way or the other, it's all good. Last thing I want to talk about in standing from a combat perspective. It's very easy for us to point the gun to our weak side, right? We can go almost 90 degrees or even further, probably like 100, 120 degrees to our weak side, no big deal, right? So I'm like mid-stride walking forward and I can stop and turn all the way this way. However, turning this way with the rifle is difficult. I can kind of bullshit myself and say I can go 90 degrees, but realistically, I can only go about 20, 30 degrees before I start to max out on how much tilt I have to the strong side. So if you're moving this direction and you have to shoot to your strong side, right? In my case, to the right, what I would do is just walk backwards. So I'm here, a threat comes up, I engage that threat, and as I turn to engage the threat, I just keep, watch out, Bailey. I keep my momentum and I just walk backwards. And now because I've shifted my hips, I can point that direction, right? Does that make sense? The words are escaping my brain in this moment with the video camera on. If I'm traveling forward, it's hard for me to aim dominant side. So as I go to hit that target to my dominant side, I'm gonna keep the directional momentum, shift my hips, so now I'm walking backwards and facing towards the weak side, so I can engage what was previously the dominant side. I hope that made sense to somebody. Okay. This has been your conclusion on Rifleman stances, and now we will talk about Marksman stances.
All right, boys and girls. Now we're going to talk about that DMR, that SPR, that marksmanship rule, and the special considerations for your shooting positions. I'm going to assume you've got some bipods on your rifle. I'm going to assume that you have some basic supporting gear, like a squeeze sock, sand sock, right? If you don't have this, or you don't have this on you at the time, you can make this out of anything. Literally just a pair of socks balled up onto themselves, your boonie hat balled up in your fist, whatever, literally clump up dirt or sand or snow to put your stock on. We'll talk about that in a second, but we're cheating, right? And we're gonna be using our day pack, our assault pack later on in the sitting, kneeling, and standing. So these are still technically unsupported, according to me and my opinions, but we are cheating as much as we can to get as much support as we can. All right, so just like the Rifleman, before I talk about actual prone position, I want to talk about getting in and out of the prone position with a weapon that has a bipod, be that a machine gun or a precision rifle. Right, so when you're going to get in the prone, whatever the case is, a lot of times what you're going to want to do is put the rifle down in front of you, right? So as you're going down for the prone with your support hand, instead of trying to chicken wing and support the weight of this weapon, which is typically going to be heavier than a normal rifle, we're going to come down and we're going to want to put this rifle down on the ground on its bipods and then land into the rifle, okay? And if we're rushing with this, right, if we're doing multiple bounds, when we go to get up, we're gonna actually set the rifle down, completely get up with both of our hands, and then while we're here, when we go to run, we're gonna grab the rifle, not by the pistol grip, but by the stock and by the handguard, like this, and run with it, like this. When we go to get down again, we're gonna take and throw it down and get behind it. Just like that. Cool? Wonderful. So now that I'm down here in the prone position, I'm supported by my bipods that have a little bit of tilt and angular give to them and stuff like that. Wonderful. I'm going to take my squeeze sock, right? So the front end of the gun is completely supported by the bipods. I don't have to muscle any weight of the front of the gun. The back of the gun is going to be supported with the squeeze sock, right? So right now I'm not even touching the gun. There's no way that I can be adding extra tension or muscular input to it, and it's going to just sit there completely still, right? And then I can squeeze or flatten this out, lay it on its side to adjust the pitch and the elevation of my rifle, right? So that's going to be controlled by my support hand, and then my firing hand is going to be placed ever so gently up here, right? So move this way so you can see. I'm working this bag, I'm fine tuning it, whatever I need to do right here, making this marriage nice. And then up here, I like to come over with a false grip, which is also why I like ambi safeties. Then I can take my shot, and it's very stable. I'm adding the least amount of input into the gun as I can when I'm actually shooting to keep the gun on target, right? Makes sense? Wonderful. All right, so for the sitting and the kneeling, I can take a pack, an assault pack, let one of the straps all the way out, wear that like a sling bag, okay? Now that I've got all of this here, I can use it to take up space, right? More points of contact, the better. Right? So now my arm, my knees and my elbows aren't even touching. This is all the way up my armpit, and my front arm is going all the way around it, and then that stock is just resting in my hand. Right? It's a very expedient way of taking up a lot of slack. So this is almost as stable as I would be with a loop sling, but I don't have this awkward loop sling that I had to set up. I'm not tied to the rifle in an awkward way, right? So I can actually get up and move with this, as I'll demonstrate here in a second after the kneeling. All right, same concept for the kneeling. For the kneeling, for the sitting, I like it to be on my front, my strong side hand. For the kneeling, I like it to be on the weak side, right? I feel like I have a lot of stability up here with my elbow and my knee, and then I can make up for a lack of stability on my weak side by utilizing this pack to rest my elbow on, right? So, here I am. And that is a very stable position. Makes sense? So I'm sitting on my foot, it's all the way down. I'm sitting on it. This is almost like a traditional kneeling. I'm just utilizing a pack instead of a loop sling because this gives me mobility. I can get up and run, I can do whatever. I can get this pack out of the way, do a mag change, whatever I need to do, right? Cool. All right, so from the standing, you're gonna wanna adjust your pack strap so that the pack is pretty tight to your body, all right? Again, we're gonna wanna do that on the dominant side, same as sitting, right? Because this is where all the weight of the rifle is gonna go. Rather than sissy hipping out to support it, we now have this pack to take up that space. Okay, so
Same thing as our traditional stance. We're going to swap our grip. Rather than grabbing like that, we're going to actually rotate and grab on the fingers. Magazine is going to go on the opposite side of the arm. And this obviously isn't nearly as stable as the previous positions, but compared to the other two standing positions, this is actually incredibly stable. This is an incredibly stable standing position. Sissy hipping out a little bit, creating those bone locks and that structure all the way from the ground up through our leg, into our hips, through the pack, into our elbows. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. I could take some pretty accurate shots this way. So that is unsupported shooting positions, boys and girls. Get out to the range and get to training.